Hey everyone, my name is Chuck Hunt and I am the Family Ministries pastor at Lake Avenue Church here in Pasadena. Welcome to our parenting ministry, our webinar. It's called A Creative Way Through Conflict. And this is part 2. This is for our elementary and younger kids. We're looking forward to having a discussion with you all. And if you haven't already done so, please make sure you answer the opening question in our chat. If you just joined, you may not have it in your chat. I know Sarah will put that in again. How many Zoom calls have you been on this week? Answering that question is going to enter you into a little bit of a raffle for, not a raffle, excuse me, person with the highest number of calls gets a book. And I'll show you that book right now. It's a book called Caring Enough to Confront. It's a book by David Augsburger, who is a former professor at Fuller. And just an all-around good guy. I took 2 of his classes, and I just remember him having some great things to say about conflict and life, and so we'll be giving that away later. You'll also have another opportunity to do that. So this is going to be a great event, and though it's dealing with a subject that's really hard and affects us regularly, this webinar has been tailored for the parents of teens and preteens. Of elementary school students. We did the teens and preteens 2 weeks ago. Whatever your age of your kids are, this information is going to be really, really helpful. Lake Avenue's parenting ministry is here to help you parent your kids uniquely better. Unique because each family is different. And our cultures are different. We come from different economic backgrounds, sometimes the same family, but we have the same Lord who has gifted us uniquely and called us to each other so that we might use those gifts in this space, and especially as parents. And better, we call it better because at the stage of our kids' life, the one that we're currently in, whatever one that is in, we need to be thinking about which one they're going into. Because we need to be better individuals, better disciples, better parents, so that we are helping our kids be better, and that they would know God better. So in this moment, we're being challenged by so many issues that it's hard to keep track of what is what. Issues in our world, our opinions about them have caused conflict in us. And around us. I don't have to mention the election and COVID and the fires and racism and policing all have taken a front seat in our minds. Yet they didn't really know that front seat was already occupied by our own families. School and shopping, just getting food on the table, college essays for some, no sports for the younger ones, our own work expectations. Other things have brought more conflict into our homes, but there is hope. And I have asked Amy Cruz, our Director of Early Childhood, to share with us a little bit of a devotion before we get started. So I'm going to turn it over to Amy.
Hello, friends. I just wanted to start off by reading a verse that's found in Ephesians. Instead, speaking the truth in love, we will grow to become in every respect the mature body of him who is the head, that is Christ. From him, the whole body, joined and held together by every supporting ligament, grows and builds itself up in love as each part does its work. That's Ephesians 4:15 and 16. As I was looking through that verse, I was reminded of how much hard work the season brings, and how being a parent, every single action that is taken is done out of so much love and care and support for your children, wanting them to grow up as best as you can. There's some reminders that I want to share with you that I'm sure you know is true, but it's hard in the season of parenting to remember. And one of them is every family has conflict. You are not alone in that. A silly story that I wanted to share. I often babysit for a family, and there's 2 children. They are about 18 months apart, and the youngest one is nonverbal, autistic little girl, and her older brother likes to say, "Casey said a bad word to me." No, she didn't. She doesn't say any words fully. So they even fight, even though she can't quite talk. And so every family has conflict that is unique to who you are and to who your kids are and how they interact with one another. Another reminder that I wanted to give you is that we're here for you. The staff at Lake Avenue loves you and cares for you. And even if you just want a break and you want us to have a silly Zoom call with your kids, yes, please. We are here and we would love to support you. Or if you just need to separate your kids because they're fighting, we are here and we support you. And we would love to just chat with your kids to help them break up conflict or even just to keep them busy while you make dinner. Another thing is that you are doing a great job. I don't know how I forgot that. But this season is unprecedented, like Chuck was saying. There are so many things, so many unknowns. And I know that your children come to you with 8 million questions every day about all the things that are happening. I had a friend tell me that their child asked Alexa when COVID was going to be over. And Alexa says, I don't know. And the kid cried. He was so disappointed because Alexa has all the answers. So there are so many things, but you guys are doing a great job. And we are so glad that you are here to learn as we learn and to be a part of this. And again, just remember that we're here for you if you guys need anything at all.
Great, thanks, Amy. Amy's going to continue to be around and within this webinar for you and with us. As we move forward, it may be helpful for you to know how all of this is going to work. And Sarah is going to put another question in the chat. That question is, describe the conflicts that you have with your children using a song title. So for example, my mom would have said of me, Ball of Confusion by The Temptations. I would say of my daughter, and I got permission to say, I would say Somebody That I Used to Know by Godier. That song, it was so good because anyway, you get the point. These moments that we have in our lives are really significant. And if you have an opportunity, and I'm hoping that someone's nearby you that you can say, oh, well, what did the conflicts look like? What would that song title be? Go ahead and throw that in the chat. I'm going to continue on while you put that in the chat. And I'm going to pick the best one that I think, and you're going to get a prize at the end. We're going to have some opportunities to hear from 2 panelists tonight. And then we're going to have a huge opportunity for questions. So don't worry, there's going to be moments along the way for you to interact with the panelists and with each other. We're not going to put you in small groups, so no conflict there. There are going to be moments for Q&A. So Q&A, you'll have a button at the bottom of your screen that should say Q&A. That button will come to myself and as the host and the panelists so that they might be able to see a question. And we'll take moments throughout the time to answer those questions. We were given some questions early on, and so we'll have some questions for the end. But if you have a burning question about something that is being said, go ahead and throw that in the Q&A and we'll see whether or not we can get to it. And if not, we'll make sure we get to it at the end. There's also a chat section. You guys have been using that, obviously. That in this version of Zoom, that comes to us so that we might see it. It's really an opportunity for you to kind of reach out and say, hey, I'm noticing this. This is good. You can send a personal message, particularly to Sarah or myself. Sarah is our Family Ministries admin, and she will try and respond to you briefly, or to myself if you have a quick question, and we can get that stuff taken care of. Sarah's working behind the scenes to take care of all of the things that are technology for us tonight, and I'm so appreciative of her work there. Without it, this just becomes an absolute mess. I see a few of you have put into the chat some really cool stuff. I love from one of our participants put Better Man by Pearl Jam as I Need to Be. So good. Someone put in Hello by Lionel Richie. I Can't Fight These Feelings Anymore. These are solid offerings. I'm going to pick my best. Love, I'm Still Standing. I want to introduce you to our panelists. Annalise Kordell is a psychotherapist and a licensed clinical social worker. and the clinical director of the Center for Connection. She has a background with a background in supporting families and young people from diverse communities. Annalise is experienced in working with anxiety and trauma and difficulties within family relationships. She landed in Pasadena by way of Pennsylvania and Chicago and England. Annalise is aware of the many ways change can disrupt and enhance our lives. Annalise completed her undergraduate degree at Penn State and received her Master's of Art in Social Work from the University of Chicago. So grateful that you would join us, Annalise. We will hear from you in a little bit. Also presenting is Anna Sudeth. Anna is also a licensed marriage and family therapist, but she currently works as the director of children and family ministries at St. Peter's by the Sea in Rancho Palos Verdes, California. It's actually near where she grew up, so she gets to be near her family. And as a graduate of UC Davis and Fuller Theological Seminary, Anna believes deeply in the importance of holding humanity and God's grace at the same time very closely together. The loves of Anna's life are her husband, Steve, and children, Caleb, who is 8, and Hannah, who is 5. If Anna isn't wrestling or working with her kids, you are most likely to find her baking or doing a crossword puzzle. And full disclosure, Anna and I worked together for 10 years, almost 10 years together at St. Peter's by the Sea while I was there. We have a great history together, and Anna is family friends. So I'm so grateful that both of you have said yes to sharing with us tonight. So let me, without talking way too much, hand it over to Anna, because I'm really excited to hear what you have for us. Anna.
Hello, everybody. It is so nice to be here with you tonight, and I am so excited to be here with you. I'm going to go ahead and put up some screen for you to see. I was really excited when Chuck asked me to be here tonight. So let me see if I can, there we go. Here we go. All right. So I was particularly excited about doing this topic of conflict because it is so relatable. As Chuck said, so I'm a marriage and family therapist. I work at a church as director of children's ministries, but I'm also a parent to young children myself. So I am in the same boat as all of you guys. This is my family here. My daughter is 5. My son turns 8 at the end of the week, as we will never forget any moment of the day this week. So being able to talk about conflict is really great because it is super relatable for me right now. Being home working and having my kids homeschooling, their lessons here now while we're working. So I can relate where we're all coming from. So I want to share a little about where I'm coming from when I'm speaking to you guys about conflict. As a therapist, I really believe in attachment parenting, and what that pretty much means is that the relationship between the parent and the child is really a foundation for me for how children will then go ahead and interact in all the other relationships in their lives, including the one they have with themselves. And so for me, it's always going to be about the relationship there. Between the parent and child, and what we can do to foster connection and closeness between parent and child. It means trust and empathy and healthy affection. And I'm always gonna lean on the side of connection over requiring compliance from kids. That at times compliance is necessary, but when there's an opportunity for connection to take precedence, that's always where I'm gonna wanna land. Healthy boundaries is another thing that is just really important for me, and especially when we're talking about conflict, because when we're in conflict, all of our own stuff is coming up, and so we need to have healthy boundaries for ourselves to know that we need to take steps back, and also for our kids to have those boundaries, that they can have them for themselves and also learn those from us, what it looks like to have healthy boundaries. And also Brene Brown's work around wholehearted living is something that informs a lot of the work I do with parents, because I think she does a really great job of summarizing what it means, what we want from life. And in particular, she talks about So wholehearted living, what that pretty much means is that we are living our lives with our whole hearts. And this word, I think I particularly got really connected to this because that's what my son Caleb's name means, wholeheartedness. So I really kind of dove right in when I started reading her stuff. But to be wholehearted means that we're showing up in our lives and recognizing that we are imperfect and vulnerable, and we can be afraid, but that we're also worthy without exception of loving, of being loved, and of belonging. I think that's also important, especially for people of faith, because I believe that that's how we exist in this world as children of God, is that we are worthy without exception, and we also acknowledge our imperfections and our vulnerabilities, but that even with those things, that God loves us despite all those things. So here's this picture again. I bring it up because there are a lot of reasons that conflict arises in our homes. And some of that is developmental and really appropriate and necessary at every stage for our kids, from, conflict being even a brand new newborn crying can feel like conflict, as especially a sleep-deprived parent can feel like conflict, all the way up to pre-adolescence and young adulthood, and every step along the way. The conflict we have with our kids can be really developmentally appropriate and necessary because we're that safe place for them to push up against. So sometimes, but there is a lot of conflict that maybe isn't necessarily necessary in our lives too. And so I want to kind of distinguish some of that a little bit. And I put up this picture because a lot of the stress and conflict we experience can come from the false expectations we have about what life should look like. And whether that's coming from social media or movies or stories our friends are telling, we often kind of fill in the story that we aren't being explicitly told about how perfect other people's lives are and how they must be acting and how things must be perfect for them. And that makes our lives feel that much more worse and not like they're living up to the way they should be. And this picture I have up is because when we were getting this picture taken, this is not what our family, is not a good reflection of how our family was feeling in that moment, as is often the case with family pictures. I think our dog Farah probably has the most accurate expression on her face. But at the time, my daughter was 4.5 and was having a really hard time putting the clothes she needed on to get there. I had a long day at work, and so it was a work day. We were rushing there. I was not in a good spot. So we have all these happy smiling faces on, but it's a reminder to me that that's just not really how it was. And so that's a reminder when I see other people with their happy smiling faces that that's not always the way that they are too. So I'm going to be talking about parenting through conflict in the framework of kind of pre-gaming and the long game. And so pre-gaming mean how we can work through conflict ahead of time and the things that we can do to get ourselves prepared for conflict with our kids, so we're not having to do all that work in the heat of the moment. And then also a little bit of talk about long game, and what that means is taking our parenting now and projecting out that what we're doing is we're really raising future adults. And so that the conflict we're experiencing right now isn't just about this moment, but how it's going to help shape our kids for the long term. So pre-gaming before conflict happens. One important thing about that is knowing what you're bringing to the table. And I say that because we're all whole humans that show up into these relationships. We're not just a mom or a dad or a caregiver. We show up as our whole selves, and so we need to know what we're bringing into the situation too. Part of that is our family of origins. When we become parents, or when we start caretaking a child, all the things from our own past come rushing back. And if you have had the opportunity to work through and process some of that stuff, either with a therapist or you've done some self-work to really work through what your family of origin was, then you can kind of catch it. But a lot of times it kind of hits us out of nowhere where we didn't expect it. And so the more we are familiar with our own stories, with our family of origin, the easier it is to kind of catch when things kind of pop up that we don't know where they're coming from. And this is really specific to our cultural backgrounds too, that depending on what culture we've grown up in, there's some really different feelings about what parenting looks like and what family should be. So this is family of origin here, family tree. What your personal history is important, knowing what your triggers are, what are the things that you bring, and the things that maybe you're sensitive about. And also your personality, that the reality is who we are and who our partners might be, or who else we're parenting with, are going to be different than our child. And so I have to kind of take into account who we are as we come into conflict. All right. The next thing I want to touch on a little bit is knowing what our values are. And what I mean by that is that, you know, as many parents are on the earth, we have different expectations, things that are important to us. Kind of the whole thing we all put together makes us unique. There's some overriding things I think most of us think are important. We want to raise responsible kids. We think most people think it's important to be kind, maybe to be able to take care of yourself. But there are also some other things that might be different between you and your friends, even maybe between you and your partner or whoever you're parenting with. And knowing what your values are, and especially what the shared values are with whoever you're parenting with, whether that's a spouse or partner or someone else, is really important to help guide your decisions when it comes to conflict. It also helps us know what are the fights that are worth engaging in, what are the conflicts that are worth really digging into, and which ones are worth stepping away from. So to know what your values are, and also to know which ones are most important. So I mentioned Brene Brown before. This is her Wholehearted Parenting Manifesto. And so in here, she's listed for her what a lot of the values that she wants to instill. And she places it in, so some of the ones here, I want you to know that you are loved and lovable. You are worthy of love and belonging and joy. That the family will practice courage. You will learn accountability and respect. So I put this up here because there's some great ideas about what values could be. So if that would be helpful for you, I think we can drop, it's on her website, and I think we're gonna be able to drop it in the chat there. But this is some great ideas about what kind of values might be important to you, and have that discussion and to know for yourself about what your values are. The other thing that's important to know is to know how you're doing, because, you know, especially these days, we've got lots of things going on. And some days we're gonna have to be more primed for conflict because we know that our tanks are already lower. And so if we're aware of that, we can prepare ourselves for what kind of conflicts we might have to enter into if we know how we're doing personally. Okay, I want to make sure, I think there's something I missed there, so let me make sure I'm, okay. All right. So it comes to the long game of parenting. Well, like I said before, what that means is that we are raising future adults. So what that looks like is that when we're making decisions now about how we engage in conflict with our kids, that's going to play out long term too. And that's why values become really important, is because the way that we frame how we want our kids to be as adults can influence how we engage in the conflict now. Let's see. You know, for a long time, kind of blind compliance was really a value for kids. That was the most important thing, that kids listened to what we said without question. And even where I've said, you know, for myself, that I think, you know, connection is something that is of utmost importance to the kids. I find myself getting kind of activated when my 4.5-year-old says no to me. It can be really activating because we have this idea about the compliance and saying yes is really important and a huge value. So I have to check that for myself when it comes up, because it is important for kids to listen. We're responsible for them. But them listening without questioning is not necessarily a value I want for my kid as an adult. I want them to be someone that is able to question the things around them, that can not blindly, believe anything that anyone says around them. I want them to be able to stand up for themselves. So part of me is to be able to engage in conflict, and instead of just saying, okay, well, no, or I won't do that, and I just say, well, because I'm your mom, instead choosing to engage in a way that brings out the value that they're asking questions. And again, this is going to look different at each kind of developmental age, what that looks like. And for me, what that really means is that we can force kids, and when they're young, to kind of comply. That gets a lot harder the older they get, to force compliance. And so that kind of compliance is not what lasts. What lasts is a changed heart, where they have been able to believe in a behavior because it resonates with who they think they are and and how they live in the world. When they're able to make a choice to do the right thing, that's what's going to last and carry with them. Not just doing things because there's a threat of love being withheld, or because there's an ultimatum, that's just what you have to do. But when their hearts are changed, that's what's going to last. But that does mean that there's going to be more effort in the moment to kind of regulate ourselves in conflict, and keep our own, and kind of process through our own stuff that's going on, so we can engage in conflict with our kids, so we can have that long-term gain. And just the last couple things I would say is that, so in the moment, what that looks like is whenever conflict arises. So there are kind of ongoing conflicts in parent-child relationships that come up all the time. And there's kind of momentary ones that catch us off guard. So the ones that we have over and over again, kind of that pre-game stuff I talked about, is what's really important. And the ones that come up maybe unexpectedly, things that we can do is to ask, number one, why am I upset? Why are we upset in this situation? Why am I kind of getting triggered in this moment? And also acting, why is my child upset? Are they hungry? Are they not feeling heard? Things like that. The next thing to ask ourselves is, what is my value? What do I want to take from this situation? What am I trying to teach in this moment? And on top of that, what can I teach with my behaviors first and with my words second? Is that more than anything, our kids are going to respond to what our behaviors are. That question about what song describes our parenting, and then what came to mind for me was Breathe by Faith Hill, because as a marriage and family therapist, we do a lot of deep breathing in this house to help calm down in the middle of conflict. And that's really important both for my kids and for me, because I model it for them, that I'm going to need to take a deep breath before I respond to what you just said, because it really hit one of my nerves. Again, like I said, connection over compliance is really important. And for me, is kind of, I always want to remind myself, is the most important thing. There you go.
I never hit my mute button when I really want to. Those are great things, and I think one of the things that you said, and you repeated it a couple times, and I appreciate that, was this idea of connection is preferable to compliance. I love that thought, because at some level, I remember our daughter is 17. I just remember those moments of compliance, like just making sure she did what she was supposed to. Like, that's really, really important. Yet at the same time, there was this moment of like, oh yeah, but even in the midst of making sure she did what she was supposed to, there's a connection that we don't need to break, And sometimes that line is a little fragile. I will have to continue to mull on that one and continue to think about that one a little bit. Annalise, what did you hear in Anna's presentation that caught you?
I've been taking all sorts of notes because I'm like, ooh, I can weave that in. I'm really grateful for all of the points that you brought up, Anna. A couple of things. Again, I also kind of resonated with that connection over compliance piece, and I'm actually going to be riffing off of a similar theme later on. I talk about losing the battle to win the war. So how do we know, like, what is our ultimate goal here with our children? And are we keeping that in mind, or are we too narrowly focused on these short-term goals that often do focus on kind of a rote compliance? So how do we kind of fold a certain level of flexibility into our parenting while also holding our parenting boundaries, which I know you also mentioned at the beginning, that boundaries are so important. I also really loved how you brought up Brené Brown. Those of us in the social work world, she's a hero. And that notion of wholehearted living that is really centered on an understanding of ourselves as being worthy of love. And then as parents, how do we make our children feel that way too? So those particular points really resonated with me, and I'm really excited because I can pull off of them later.
So good, so good. I want to remind all of you as well that the Q&A, if you have questions, go ahead and hit the Q&A. Those will be coming to us, and we'll be able to respond to any of those questions that come in there, and we'll definitely be getting to them at the end. But right now, I wanted to hand it over to Annalise, because Annalise has some things that she would love to share with you.
Oh, and my share screen is ready to go. There we go. And slideshow. Okay. So my name is Annalise Kordell, and I work at the Center for Connection here in Pasadena. We're a private practice that covers mental health, occupational therapy, educational therapy. We're like a multi-professional organization. And as you can hear from our title, the Center for Connection, that's maybe another reason why that whole connection vibe really sat with me, because our whole model is based on the importance of connection and relationship, and how that enables the real positive growth and well-being in children and families and individuals. I also am in the distance learning parent time of COVID trenches, along with all of you here tonight. I have a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old daughter. So I am right there with all of you in just trying to juggle being the best parent I can under extraordinary circumstances, trying to make all of this make sense for my kids, trying to hold the knowledge that my kids are under stress and strain, unlike I ever encountered growing up, and being mindful of that and extend them a certain amount of grace, while also, holding my parenting boundaries and keeping an eye on what kind of adult am I trying to shape and mold. So I'm with y'all guys in this. I love how Anna started right off the bat talking about foundational values and beliefs. And I think that's so important, especially when we go into moments of conflict. Conflict, it's common in my field of therapists. We all talk about how we all tend to be a little conflict avoidant. We're like nice people who want to make everybody happy. And in our field, we kind of have to be able to hold conflict for our clients. But conflict doesn't feel good. It activates all of those feelings in our bodies, in our nervous system that are unpleasant. My stomach always gets a little crunched up, and our hearts beat, and our hands clench, and the conflict activates our flight or fight response. It's not pleasant. And one thing that can be really helpful is to, as Anna was pointing out earlier, is that pregame stuff where you have already a sense of your values, your foundations. What are you going into this situation already holding and knowing, and what helps root you in a sense of emotional safety and purpose? So 2 of those key values that I'm going to draw attention to actually, for me, came out of my work as a therapist. They're little nuggets that came to me in various trainings and education bits throughout my career, but really ended up sitting with me, not just as a therapist, but as a parent. And as I've tried to really absorb these ideas moving forward with my kids, it's really made a big difference in how I approach conflict in general and parenting overall. So the first one, and this one is key, is that everyone at all times is doing the best they can. And then I added, especially children. And this is really vital. This is actually a little foundational value that came out of some work that I was doing with adults with chronic mental illness. And it was always, remember this, everyone's always doing the best they can. And when you really sit in that and you let that understanding of grace kind of permeate how you view everyone that you come in contact with, especially your children, it just helps you really grow in empathy. It helps you grow in understanding. It makes it less likely for you to take that conflict in a personal way that makes you feel threatened and unsafe, because you understand that this person is acting in this way, not in an effort to hurt me. It's because they're doing the best they can. And maybe the best they can is lashing out in a hurtful way, but they're doing the best they can. And I really, holding that has just been so critical, as I said, both as a therapist and a mom for me. The second one, and this is something that's really, really big and a growing sentiment that's in the child mental health field, is really zeroing in as behavior as the form of communication. So a lot of times, and I think for many of us in our own experience of being parented from across multiple cultures, we sort of see behavior as a problem that needs to be addressed, or something that needs to be extinguished. Bad behavior needs to be extinguished in some way. It needs to be put away, and we need to replace it with good behavior. And if you kind of reframe and reformulate behavior as a form of communication, behavior is not a problem to be solved. It's not something bad that needs to be extinguished or corrected, but it's a way for that person to communicate. And when we're especially thinking about children, particularly young children, I know this audience, this is the younger children, kind of preschool littles and elementary age kids. These are kids who's are still growing in their developmental capacity to effectively communicate in language and words. You know, a 4-year-old is not going to be able to say, well, mother, I'm feeling rather stressed today over the state of the world, and I'm a bit hungry, so I think I'm going to throw a temper tantrum now. Like, they just don't do that. They don't have the capacity to do that. They express their feelings through their behaviors, often behaviors that are not pleasant and that we don't like, and that can easily grow and evolve into conflict. So Sarah, would you mind throwing up the first poll that I gave you that was about behavior? Yay. Okay, thank you. So I would like for everyone, if you could just take a minute. So this first poll, what do you think your child's behavior most often communicates? Just pause for a minute and think, when my child is behaving, and obviously many of us have more than one child, but maybe think generally, when they're behaving in a way that creates conflict or feels like conflict, what are they actually trying to communicate there? Like, take a minute to sit in it and think about it. So if you don't mind just taking a minute to answer that. I'll tell you that there are I very intentionally picked the items there. I'm tired, I'm lonely, I'm afraid, I don't feel understood, I don't feel safe. You'll notice that there are a couple of things that are not in there. These are the things as a child therapist that I sometimes hear. I'm trying to manipulate the situation, or I don't want to do what I don't want to do. I hear that one a lot. Or I'm spoiled. You know, some of these more judgmental things. I actually intentionally did not put those in there. These are things where it's like, really, I'd like for you to think about what's going on in the internal world and experience of our children. So I'm going to move along now with my, if everyone's done with the poll, I'm going to close it out. Thank you. Thanks, Sarah. Can you show us, Sarah, what the, ooh, I like it. This is just really cool. I've never done this poll before. I'm really like jazzed about it. I love, a lot of you put, I'm tired. I know a lot of you have younger children, and even my 10-year-old actually often has I'm tired meltdowns. And I love that so many of you put down, I don't feel understood. Yes, you're gonna love like 2 slides from now when I talk about being understood. I love this group. You guys are, you're doing a lot of the work for me. I don't have to convince you hard. You're getting that kids really want to feel understood. That's gorgeous. Thank you. So if kids are doing this, remember I started with this premise that the kids they're doing their best. Well, if they're doing their best, how come their best looks like refusing to do their schoolwork, melting down into a puddle of tears when you ask them to brush their teeth, you know, not putting on younger kids tend to be, their conflict tends to be coming more in the style of defiance. A big one in my world is refusing to eat your dinner. Oh, I love that one. So what is it that's getting in their way? So if I'm saying that behavior is a communication, your kids are communicating something and our kids are doing the best. And if the best they can is a full-on meltdown right in the middle of their Zoom class, what's that? How is that the best? What's getting in the way? And what are they trying to communicate? So I put a couple of things on this slide. Just for us, as this is kind of that pre-game work that Anna was talking about, things for us to keep in mind, to just start getting really curious about when our kids are showing some conflict, when they're showing those problematic behaviors. Is this what's going on with them? So the first one is one of my favorite acronyms. I've taught it to my own children. They're great about it because they start running around going, halt, halt. HALT stands for hungry, angry, lonely, tired. It's great. It's super handy. And it's a great way. I know a lot of you said, why is my kid acting this way? They're tired. Absolutely. These are basic needs that need to be met. Am I hungry? Am I tired? Increasingly angry and lonely for our kids that are kind of stuck in quarantine. Are my needs being met? Am I acting this way because I just need a basic need met? Do I need a granola bar? Do I need a nap? You know, when we can connect to those very immediate basic needs, it's surprising how quickly conflict can be ended. And I have actually, again, for your slightly older kids, like I said, I've taught this to my own children so that they can communicate to me. My 10-year-old will come in. She's kind of one of those super fast metabolism, skinny little kids that like gets a sugar crash immediately. So we've taught her to be able to just to come in and say, halt, 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 when she's feeling that way and she's kind of turning into an emotional puddle. And we're like, okay, you need a snack. We'll help you along here. So you can help your kids kind of engage in this. The 4 S's is very much connected to what Anna was talking about, that wholehearted parenting. This is that idea of everyone, every human wants to feel seen, safe, soothed, and secure. These are the fundamentals of Anna mentioned attachment parenting, of connected parenting. The idea that as parents, this is our #1 job beyond the obvious, like keeping them fed and sheltered and clothed. We want to keep them, they need to be seen. They need to know that we see them, we understand what's happening with them, that we're safe, that we're creating a safe world for them, that they're soothed, that when they're upset, we have the capacity to soothe and hold them, and that they're secure, that no matter what happens in their world, we've got them. So these are things that if our kids are showing up some difficult behaviors that are leading to conflict, it might be that they're not feeling one of these 4 S's. So that's something to get curious about. Another one is just developmental capacity. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but just a lot of times when I have parents coming to me doing consultations about their kids, that's one of the first things I check in. Are the demands being placed on the child beyond really what can be reasonably expected of them. And I do want to mention, I'd spend a little time on this just in the era of Zoom school. I have a 7-year-old second grader. She's a bright little bunny, but the capacity to pay attention to her to-do list, to watch the clock, to know when she's supposed to sign on to Zoom, to follow along with her asynchronous work, to upload that asynchronous work onto Seesaw, a 7-year-old's brain can't do that. That is so beyond her developmental capacity. So I'm not really expecting that a lot from her. I'm not demanding compliance on that, because I just know if I got really demanding on the compliance of that, her little brain is going to go, I can't do this. And I will likely see some conflict behaviors from her. Environmental stressors, we are all under tremendous environmental stressors right now. And even though many as parents, we're doing our best as possible to shield our children from it, they feel it, they understand it. You know, they haven't seen their friends in 7 months. These are things that are really affecting them. History of trauma outside of the current COVID situation. And I say trauma can be a number of things. It could be medical trauma, it can be a car accident they had, or it could be a separation in the family, something that's happened in their past that sort of has upset their balance, primarily of those 4 S's, seen, safe, soothed, and secure. And there's just some specific challenges, academic demands, or the academic demands outpacing your child's academic capacity. Neurodiversity, does your child have ADHD, autism spectrum, or is there just some neurodiversity there that might be impacting their way their brain processes information and holds it, that might make them more likely to experience conflict. And sensory challenges. Do you have a child who gets easily flooded and overwhelmed with a lot of sensory input? And so their little bodies are going, oh my gosh, I can't handle all of this. I'm just going to fall apart and I'm not going to do what you say. For those of you with younger kids, the battles over socks, underwear, and shoes, a lot of that boils down to sensory challenges. I remember having terrible conflict with one of my daughters over pants, because there was not a pair of pants in the world that felt good on her little body. And she is a child with some sensory sensitivity. So these are just things, when your child presents this, just check that. Feel like it's a checklist in your mind. Are these the things that they might be communicating? Is this what's holding them back from doing their best and being the best that they can do? So then what? So you've identified what it is. You've decided, oh, I see that my child is behaving this way because their pants are too tight and they're tired and they don't feel safe in the world. You know, you've kind of gone through that. What do you actually do? So can we pull up the poll again, Sarah? Because I have the second poll. And we're going to talk a little bit about validation. So what do you think is the most comforting statement when you're upset? So I want you to think about yourself here. You know, when you're feeling upset, when you're feeling, you know, like you're going to want to show some behaviors, because adults, we do this too, that are showing conflict, that we're not feeling seen, safe, soothed, and secure. We're feeling a little halty. What do you want to hear? What actually works for you? Does it work for you when someone says, oh, don't worry, it's fine? Does it work when someone says, you know what, let me just show you this funny video. It'll get you back, you know, watch this and you won't worry about that anymore. Or does someone say, oh, what's the big deal? I don't see what's so upsetting about that. I'm like, you know, so your kids haven't gone to school in 7 months. They're still alive. I don't see what the big deal is. Or when someone says, I understand how you feel. So I kind of stacked that one a little bit. You can go ahead and finish up that poll. You can go ahead and pull it down. You just want to click on that. Can we show the results if there are results in? Yeah, so the majority of you kind of figured out where I was going there. People love to feel understood. Feeling understood is, especially in the early days of my career, we would talk about our magic therapist, or our therapist magic wand, where we would just magically make everything better. It was slightly sarcastic. But validation, which is helping people feel understood, really is the magic wand. Being able to communicate, and in this case specifically to our children, that we see, hear, and understand them is remarkably effective at sort of calming that initial emotional storm, whatever is brewing underneath that conflict, getting them more regulated, getting them more calm, getting them into the place where we can actually get in our parenting point. You know, what is it that we're trying to accomplish in this moment? So a couple of guidelines for validation here. Number one, just be curious about what's happening for your child. When I try to teach validation to parents, I try to get away from being like, I see you're mad right now, or you must be mad right now. I think phrasing it more in terms of, it really looks like you're really upset right now. I'm really getting that, you know, I can see you right now, you're really mad, huh? So it's more of a curious framing and a phrasing versus I am telling you what you're feeling. I really see, like, you're really feeling mad. I wonder if there's a lot of frustration. Is that frustration that's going on for you? So you're not telling them, but you are curious and you're engaged in wanting to get to know what's happening for them. Repeat and reflect what the child is saying or doing. So this is classic therapist bag of tricks right here. Repeat back what the person is saying to you. Repeat back what the child is saying. So you're saying to me that you're really, really mad because your sister took your Legos. Yeah, I hear that. You worked really hard on that Lego creation and your sister took your favorite Legos. I hear you. Notice how my voice there at the end kind of had a little bit of a, yeah, I hear you, you're mad. I kind of reflected a little bit of her feeling in my nonverbals there, like the way I was saying it. I let her know, I see what happened. Your sister took your Legos. You worked really hard on that. I get that you're mad. So you're kind of repeating and reflecting back. That way that clicks into that little brain saying, mom gets it, dad gets it. They know what's happening here. Use your feelings word. We always want to help kids with their feelings vocabulary. So use your feelings words, mad, sad, disappointed, frustrated, because we're helping give them the words. They're developing that developmental capacity to express their feelings. But the more we model that to them, the more confident they'll be doing that. Name what's being communicated. I said it's okay to be wrong. So, you know, you're really upset about your sister taking your Legos. And I feel like, did she take your Legos? A lot, huh? You know, kind of get what's the underlying thing. And if you get it wrong the first time, it's okay. You know, I thought I understood it, but, you're really saying it's because you miss your friend and you used to play Legos together. Oh, okay, I get it now. The main thing is that you're active in the pursuit of really trying to understand what's happening there with your kid, and really express it. The next thing, this point that I have here about accept is really important. And this is going to some of the stuff that Anna was talking about earlier. This goes back to that 4 S's again, the safe and secure part of the 4 S's. Our kids look to us for their emotional cues. They are looking to see us, to see what we do with their feelings. And a lot of times these really big, angry conflict feelings are actually really terrifying and uncomfortable in those little bodies. And when they see that we're able to hold and accept those feelings, that we're able to say, yep, I see you are a giant ball of red seething anger right now, or you are dissolving in a puddle of tears and you are torn, and I see that and I accept it and I can hold it. You can give that giant ball of emotion to me right here as your parent. I can hold it. I'm not scared by your feeling. I'm not overwhelmed by it. I got you. That's really, really key. That's something where when conflict elevates, it's because a lot of times parents get activated themselves and then they start going into their own place of feeling threat and your own place of flight or fight. And so you're kind of angry and upset, and now you're both together, kind of bouncing your anger and upset in your red zone, flight or fight stuff back and forth. Part of the troubles with that is that you're showing your child that you can't hold their anger, and it's actually scary for them. So the more that you can work on, as Anna said, breathing, holding your own space, tag out if you need to. Lord knows I've done that plenty of time with my husband. Like, I can't deal with this right now. I need to go regulate myself. You're in, to sort of help it, so that, as I know, it's really important that the more regulated I stay and the more present I stay and the more I can communicate that I can hold this, the better outcome we're going to have. And I just said, soothe your child's rumble spirits. So you're trying to get them back down. You're trying to get them back calm. And then, excuse me, when you're all done and you've got your child and they're nice and they're gooey and they're soothed and they're connected with you and they're calm, then you score your parenting point. And that takes me to the next slide. And I'm almost done here. I actually haven't been watching my time, so hopefully I'm not going too far over. This is the balancing act. Validating and understanding does not equal excusing. It does not mean permissive. Oh, I said dismissive. I meant permissive. It does not mean being permissive. If you had a parenting point that you were trying to get across here, like, I'm sorry, you do need to put your pants on. This is me thinking of my daughter when she was younger. You can't go to Trader Joe's with no pants on. You still got to wear your pants. Hold those boundaries. Boundaries are important. Boundaries are one of the ways that children feel safe. Boundaries create a safe container for children to sit in, so they know where their world starts and where it ends. What behaviors are acceptable and okay? What behaviors, not so much. What works, what doesn't. So if you have a boundary that's like a reasonable boundary, like put your pants on or brush your teeth, or you can't hit your sister over the head with a Lego, hold your boundaries. The main thing is, excuse me, not to try to hold those boundaries when you're in the heat of conflict. Wait until we've understood. Wait until we're validated. Wait until we understand. Wait till we're nice and gooey and full of all that wonderful warmth and connection. And then we say, yep, I get it. The pants make you feel scratchy. They're super uncomfortable. You don't like them. You still got to wear pants because you can't wear no pants when you go to Trader Joe's. We got to put our pants on. So this is where I get into creating a safe container, but have room for flexibility. So this is where your understanding can kick in and create room for flexibility. I understand that you say your pants are really, really scratchy. I wonder if there's something else that you can wear. Maybe not this pair of pants, maybe a pair of leggings. Maybe we can wear those. You still aren't going to Trader Joe's with your little underpants hanging out, but I understand you. I'm willing to be flexible. I'm willing to work with your needs. So you kind of create that room for flexibility within the safe container. In the context of learning, of distance learning, a lot of us are having difficulties with our children around that. One of the ways that I've been kind of creating flexibility with my kids is, we still have to do the work, but I'm being really flexible as much as I can with the structure that the school provides about when and how. So if I see my kids are just really zoomed out and they're fried and they're tired and they're hungry and they need a snack, and then if I ask them to sit down and do their asynchronous work, they're going to blow a gasket, then I say, okay, we're going to pause. We're going to go outside. We're going to breathe a little bit. I'm not going to make you do it right now. And we'll get it done when we need to get it done. So you kind of create that little space for flexibility. But I'm not going to say you're not going to get your work done, because we're still holding responsible for that. So that's the kind of this idea of the long game, the losing the battle to win the war, creating space for flexibility, but still holding your long-term boundaries in place. Excuse me, my throat just got really dry. All right, finally, quick summary points, summarizing it up. Get curious. Why is my child acting this way? What are they trying to tell me? Curiosity is the highway to empathy, and empathy is going to keep you calm and present and connected in the moment, and keep you from elevating the conflict and put you in that place to be a warm, safe, holding, accepting parents to help de-escalate the conflict. Validation is the key. Everyone, from your 18-month-old toddler to your, 96-year-old grandma wants to be heard, seen, and understood. And once they feel heard, seen, and understood, it's amazing. Like, I've had therapy sessions where I'm like, have parents and teenagers and parents like this with each other. And then when I kind of get in there and I say, this is what the teenager is saying, this is what the parent is saying, you can just watch them go. Totally de-escalates the situation. Understanding, validation. And try to strike that balance between supportive boundaries and flexible responses. That's kind of key. Know where you want to hold firm and know where you want to be flexible, because that's going to create the safe container, but it's also going to show understanding and flexibility. And I just have to say this at the very end, because I am so with everyone in the parenting trenches right now. Be kind to yourself. Amy earlier said this too, and I jotted it down because she was so great about saying this. You're doing a great job. This is really hard stuff. Parenting is hard anyway. Parenting in the middle of a pandemic is like triply hard. Give yourself grace. Give yourself the grace that I put a lot of stuff out here about giving grace to your children, giving grace to people around you. Extend that grace to yourself too. You're doing the best you can, and holding that space is going to make you the best parent you can be.
That was great stuff. Good stuff. Thank you so much, Annalise. There's so much in there that I want to respond to. But one of the things that I think that was the setup for your whole entire discussion was this idea that our kids are trying to communicate with us. And a lot of the conflict comes because they are having a difficult time communicating that which they are feeling. And that's what they're saying. Like, if I can remember that, then I can get to that place of curiosity with them, and that we can get there, right? And I love how that goes back and forth with what Anna said earlier, which was, just making sure that we know our own selves, because, my kid comes at me, it's like, oh my gosh. And if I don't know where I am and where my feelings are and how to control those and how to walk in that, then sometimes I get caught and we do things with our kids that are really, really difficult. Quick story. I would love that you said you got to have pants on. There's a story about my daughter. When she was much younger, we were going to Santa, and she decided she did not want to wear pants. And this was one of those flexible moments where she was like, I want to go, but I don't want to wear pants. I just want to go in my diapers. And my wife and I looked at each other and said, all right, here we go. And we went. And we showed up there, and she got in line, and she got to the front of the line, and then was like, nope, I'm not taking a picture with Santa. So we went home. That's the only picture, the only year we don't have a picture with Santa. But I think it was just a good moment. Anyway, Anna, any responses to Annalise's presentation?
Yeah, so much good stuff. And thank you so much, Annalise. All great stuff. One of the things stuck when you said at the beginning, idea, and again at the end about, the kids are, all of us, believe that people are doing the best they can, and especially kids. And for me, I have to remind myself, it's an empathy builder for me with my kids, because sometimes I don't have a lot of empathy when I've had the same argument, or I've asked this, the same thing to happen over and over again. It's hard to build empathy, or when they're throwing a fit about something that is just not that big of a deal. I remind myself that a lot of the times I want to be doing the same thing too. Sometimes at the end of Zoom meetings, I want to scream, or I'm sitting on my Zoom meeting, I want to close the lid and say forget it. So they're feeling the exact same way I do, but they're doing the best they can because they are not adults and they haven't learned to tolerate that uncomfort yet. And so I think that's just such a great reminder that I have to remind myself of all the time. So thanks.
We want to get to some questions. And so if any of this has brought up questions and moments for you, then I would hope that you would throw that in the chat. You can post questions, or they can come anonymously to us. All you need to do is check that box if you have any questions. We received some questions beforehand. And so I want to jump into those as we wait for you guys to populate the questions in the chat there, or in the question and answer piece. But this is for either Anna or Annalise. I think this is really helpful, and you both probably have something to say, but how do we parent through sibling-specific conflict? So when siblings are going at it, all those things are helpful when we're in control of one side or the other, but how do we help the kids get through together?
One of the things, I think the camp tonight's idea about boundaries, I think for me is one of the, in my own parenting, is how I navigate my kids' conflict between, and I think that as you're asking, it's between the conflict between kids.
Yes.
Yeah. So is for me, so my kids are 8 and 5. They have 2.5 years, and they get along pretty good most of the time, but holding boundaries. And so what that looks like is knowing very clearly if they have spaces in the house that if they are there, they are theirs, and they don't they can always go to those places if they need to have some time to themselves. Because also my kids are two really different kids. One of my kids is kind of like sensitive and a thinker, and my other one has a lot of spunk and energy and kind of likes to rile things up a little bit. And so we can get a little conflict sometimes around that very thing. And one thing is that I do try and build the empathy between them. Things about, a lot of them, about the touching and stuff. So we talk about, we all get to make choices about our own bodies. Just like you get to make a choice about your body, your brother or sister gets to make a choice about their body. And so that's right. And a big part of conflict for between siblings too is making sure that I'm getting time with each of them. When that's kind of gotten weighted one way or the other, between me or their dad, if it's gotten out of whack, the conflict between them gets higher too. So that's one pregame thing I can do, is be aware that I'm spending special time with each of the kids in ways that we can.
That's great, Anna. One of the things that I would add is, the work that I talked about the validation and the understanding, that's really important that we give to our kids. One of the things and I'm not always successful, but I try to do, and my girls are a little older, like I said, they're 10 and 7. So they're out of that little preschool phase. My 7-year-old is now old enough to kind of hold some of these more cognitively complex ideas. So first off with my two, I just separate them, because I'm like, you know what, you're both activated. You're both in your red zones. You there, and just so that they can cool down. And then I try to speak to both of them. If my husband's around, we try to tag team that. But one of the things I really try to do is not only to try to go through my routine about validating each of my two girls, and what their stance is in the conflict, but I really am trying now at this point in their development is to get them to mentalize their siblings' perspective, because I'm going to try to build up that understanding in them, the capacity to understand where their sister is coming from, so that they're building that empathy, and so they'll have that capacity within themselves to understand the conflict, and then hopefully be able to come back together again and move on. But I really see that sibling conflict is actually a great opportunity as a parent. And I'm like, ooh, great. I know it's painful and it's terrible, but it's a great opportunity as a parent to try to do some teaching about some empathy building with our kids. Why did your brother do that? Why do you think they did that? And how do you think your brother feels right now? How do you think your sister feels about that right now? That's a really nice little potential teaching moment. But definitely don't try to get into that when they're in the heat of the moment, because that doesn't work. So
that's great.
Hopefully that answered the question.
We have another question. My 7-year-old daughter has the tendency to either avoid conflict or get mad and sad about conflict. So how do we deal with a young one who is conflict averse?
So I'm going to jump on this one because it gets at something that I love, and this is coming from my therapist work. Younger ones, and so 7 and younger kids, a lot of times express themselves through play. So if you think you've got a hunch as a parent, something's cooking in that little head, and they're avoiding it. They can't quite say it. They're not really quite expressing it. But you know, as a parent, your instincts are telling you there's something up there. They're upset about something. Play with them. Just play with them. Kids are really, really expressive through their play. Play is where kids really sometimes get at stuff that they can't quite say, but they got to get it out. So one of my best examples of this is in the early days of the quarantine, my little one, she was still just 6 then in 1st grade. My kids are really into Lego right now, if you can't tell. She built like a Lego house, and she put all the little people in it. And then she turned the house upside down, and the people were scattered up. And then I was kind of playing with her. I was like, what's going on there? And she was like, the world is upside down and no one can help the people. And this is, this was a 6-year-old who just had been, rapidly pulled from her school. Everything was shutting down. She can tell her parents are scared. She couldn't quite articulate it, but this is how she was expressing how she felt. The world felt upside down, and she doesn't know if it can be fixed. So it's actually, we want to teach our kids good conflict skills and how to assert themselves and how to express their feelings. And that's very, very important. And I hear that. And I also just want to point out that, your little ones just might not have the vocabulary and the capacity to express that, but let them try it in their play. See if they show it in their play, and then you can get into it with them. Oh, I feel really sad too. You can model in their play effective conflict skills. So, all right. Sorry, I just like talking about how kids do play. It's something I get clearly jazzed about.
No, that's really good. I want to jump into the next question because we got a few more to get to. The next question is, how do you motivate a child to do or learn something that is really, really difficult? And I feel like this comes out of that space of like kids just not wanting to do hard things. So I don't know what you guys have in terms of that.
Yeah, I'll say something. I mean, I had this conversation literally today with my child, so feeling very fresh. So for me, to motivate a child to learn to do something that is difficult is again kind of the scene piece of it, is acknowledging that it's hard, and feeling that with them and understanding that, yeah, this is hard. But I also, even with my kindergartner, who, let's talk about, just in starting with a kindergartner has been rough. But so even today we talked about how, we all have different skills. Some things come really easy to us that are hard for other people. Some things are, really easy for me that are hard for them, and something might be really easy for them, but it's really hard for me to do. But the hard stuff is how we grow. It's how we get better at things. And so with like little kids, I talk about, even concrete things like learning how to ride a bike, is that they know whatever kind of experience they've already had of getting through a hard thing, that you can draw them back to show them what they've already done, can be really helpful for younger kids. Show them, remember when you were trying to ride a bike and that was so hard, you fell down a lot. But do you remember how good it felt after you got back on there and you kept going, and now you can ride a bike. You are a bike rider. And so those hard things we have to go through them to get better, and those are the things that help us grow. So that for me, for the younger kids, is kind of using that concrete stuff, and acknowledging that, yeah, this is hard, and not putting, and for me, I have to check myself that I'm not putting my own pressure on them to go through something before they're ready to do it. But also encouraging them and saying that I believe and support them, that they have the capacity. So.
That's a great response. In my world, kind of thinking big picture, and especially as you were talking about the long game, and I think there's a sense of, for me, if I were to answer that question, it's at some point in time, and maybe lots of points in time, you have to do hard things in front of your kids. Like, you have to allow them to see you do hard things and not always just be the champ. And I think those are those moments where if we live out our faith, our lives, those things with our kids, it's not a sign of like weakness. It's like, hey, this is what real life is, you know, and we can do these things. And I'm frustrated, I'm tired. I can't tell you how many times I've said in front of my daughter, I'm so frustrated about this thing. And her response to me has been great from when she was little, even to now. She'd be like, Dad, you got it. Like there's some encouragement and gives her some life into that. But it also is, it allows me to come back and say, man, this is really hard. And I can say, Ryan, you got it. Like you can do this. And there's some camaraderie in that. And there's that family built life. And so I just want to say that you got to start that even as young kids. You've got to allow them to see you struggle and even fail sometimes at things. Really dives into that piece. I'm going to jump into another question that was sent in the Q&A, and that is how do your own expectations interfere with good parenting? And I think that is a question and an answer in and of itself. So Annalise, I know Anna, you spoke to it a little bit at the beginning of that, but do you want to go deeper with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this can be a lot of different things about how our expectations can interfere with good parenting, because we have all different kinds of expectations, right? We have expectations about what we want for our kids, like kind of the lives we want. We want them to be able to go places in life, to have opportunity and choices. So we want them to do well in school so they can do those things. We can have expectations based on our own experiences, based on the way we function in the world that can influence our parenting. And we can also have expectations. I've talked about this with parents a lot, is that we have these perceived expectations from other people sometimes too, that that our own insecurities maybe get riled up about expectations that others have. Maybe that's whether that's the toddler throwing a fit on the floor of the store, or the college that a kid doesn't get into, or whatever. We've kind of internalized these expectations, and the way I would say it can in general affect our good parenting is when we're looking at those expectations instead of the kid that's in front of us. As if we're focusing on all these other things out there, and it might make us miss our actual child that's in front of us. And so part of that, I think, is a belief that there's a lot of ways to live life, and knowing that our kids' way of doing that might be different than ours. The way that we parent might be different than the way our friend or the other parent at school might be choosing to parent their kid. And so acknowledging that there's lots of different ways, and that's why that value stuff becomes important, is because if you've done that work, where kind of your own faith life can become important, because that can kind of drive conviction about why you're making choices. So I guess that's kind of how I answer that question. That's
great. Annalise, what would you say about that?
I love Anna. I love your answer. And I love this question because it's such a parenting from the inside out question. And it really speaks to how parenting is much a journey and an opportunity for personal development for us as parents too. Like, our kids have a beautiful way of dragging out that baggage that we thought we may have been long dealt with, or aspects of ourselves that we'd rather not acknowledge, or things from our past and our own experiences of being parented that we're like, not comfortable, but we don't really want to mess with. Parenting has a way of just pulling that out. And it can be very uncomfortable, but it can also be a wonderful, wonderful opportunity, and even a blessing, and an opportunity for you to say, okay, I got to work on this. I got something to deal with here. I got something to maybe do some work on myself here, because this is bringing up something for me. So I got this expectation that my kid is going to be a straight A student, and I get really activated when my kid isn't paying attention to school. What's that about? What's that? Why is that happening to me? So, that it's because of course we're not already busy with every other thing happening. Let's work on some personal development too. But I like this question because it really gets at that. And spending that time with yourself is actually really, really important as a parent.
Okay, so I love those answers, and I think expectations are hard to deal with when we don't know where the expectation comes from, right? We have to name that expectation. Well, that expectation comes from this thing over here, and then you have to apply it to your kid and say, is that a good thing or a bad thing for my kid? And I think your kids will tell you who they are. We got time for one more question, and I've got a bunch more, but I want to hit this one for sure. And that is, how do we as parents motivate preschoolers to do things like worksheets and chores? How do we help preschoolers develop social emotional skills? I think we've been talking about that, but it's specific, like how do we get them to do the things that we're asking them to do? I mean, obviously part of that is like this thing of like, all right, we have all this wonderful like engagement and connection, but we still need you to do some things. So how do we do that?
All right, I'm going to be real snarky. Preschoolers should be doing worksheets anyway. It's actually not developmentally appropriate. I'll go there. I mean, they can do some of that stuff, but really, the under 5 crowd, they do most of their learning through play and experience. And if you've got, and every once in a while, I mean, I was that nerdy little 4-year-old that was like, Mommy, give me a worksheet. So like, I can't totally say that. But you know, if you have a child if you have a preschooler and under 5 who's really pushing up against something that's like a really structured like worksheet or something like that, you might want to check in on the stuff that I talked about just developmental appropriateness. You know, some kids can do it and they love it. You know, I've worked with kids that are they just dig into it and they love it, but it's actually a really hard cognitive task for like a 4-year-old to do. So I can't help myself.
And I would add to that sometimes even kids that are, even if they're intellectually advanced, they're really verbal, they're capable of doing worksheets. There could be, you know, that sometimes we get tricked into thinking what their developmental stage is. Maybe if there's an only child that is really super verbal and talks like a grown-up, we might think that they're capable of a lot more developmentally, but they're still a little kid, and especially a preschooler. And so I find having to do that for myself is like just check in. Okay, what really is developmentally appropriate, like Annalise was saying, but sometimes we can get tricked into thinking our kids are capable of something because they're super verbal, but that doesn't necessarily mean they've developed those social emotional skills. And that is developed through play and connection, you know, reading stories. And here's the thing is that I'm not a great like player with my kids. Like the getting down, it takes a lot of energy for me. And so I have to be really prepared to like get down on the floor and especially to play with my like 5-year-old that way. But I love reading books. I can do, you know, that's something that we can do and we can sit and do that together. And we can talk about the story and do voices and stuff. So that's one way for me, or my husband, he's got all over the place stuff. So I let him handle that. But I know, especially for like single parents, that can be, you know, a lot when you feel like you have to be everything all at once. So that would be my piece about the developmental appropriateness.
Cool. Thank you so much. We're coming to the end of our time, and as we wrap up, I just want to say thank you to both Anna and Annalise for helping us expand this discussion about conflict for our families and specifically for our youngest kids, and for you all as parents. This has been really great. I've learned a ton for myself, and even as my daughter's getting ready to go off, I have a few things that I've got to work on for sure. Anna, any last words from you? Last words, resources?
Just Annalise has already mentioned this, but I mean, what parents are doing right now has not been done before in this way. And so the kind of grace that as parents you have to have to yourself, that, you know, that we're hopefully extending to our kids, that we're extending to, you know, yourself too, is that this is, I mean, is more than anyone can handle. I've said that to more than one person. It's like, it's too much between the homeschooling and the political climate and racial stuff and police and it's all too much to hold all at once. And so we can't do it all. And so that's why kind of those values are important, is to choose what is most important and to make that the focus with what energy you have. And so it's just been really nice being here with you guys tonight. So thanks, Chuck.
Thank you for joining us. Annalise, any last words?
I absolutely, I just love the idea. I think I've found ever since this pandemic started, I've been really settling on this idea of grace, and grace for ourselves, grace for others, grace for our children. How can we extend that everywhere we go? And in the context of conflict, extending grace can really help neutralize a lot of that. So I also have a dog here that just wants to be part of the picture, and he can't.
Oh, so good.
No. Sorry about that.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Please know that the Family Ministries staff, like Amy said at the top, really wants to be there for you and your families. Stay connected to what we've got going on for you and your families, lakeav.org/family ministries. In the coming weeks, we're going to have a parenting part to that. We'll have a whole parenting website come up in the next couple of weeks. And by the end of the week, we should have at least our first Uniquely Better Parenting, the conflict series up. We're going to try and get this video up soon as well. If you need to go there, we'll also you'll also get an email pretty briefly about the other things that will be coming and a link where you can find all of that online. Lastly, I wanted to say to you all that we are also looking for more people to join our Uniquely Better Parenting, our ministry team. And that's the people who kind of set the direction and set the tone for these conversations and talk about how we want to be the best ministry for parents in this area, and we're trying to do that. So if you want to join that, send me an email at chuckh@lakeav.org, and then we can get talking. Let me pray for us before we leave, and then we can close out. Lord God, thank you for all the parents that are represented here, all the ones that signed up and weren't able to show up because something else happened. God, and all those who are listening even now from a video after this. God, may you bless us so that we might be the best parents to these wonderful kids that you've given us over this beautiful time that you've given us, even however hard it's been. God, meet us in our places. We pray it in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks for joining us. I hope you have a great night. Take care.